Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is my Kathy Shea deep dive mini-series. I've always wanted to do this mini-series because I've always wanted to know what happened to Kathy Shea. Like among other people in the community, there is a deep curiosity of what happened to the little 6-year-old that disappeared in Tyrone, Pennsylvania in 1965. This is going to be 60 years. 60 years that this little girl disappeared. She would be 66 if she were still alive today. But before I get into that whole story, February 2nd, 1959, Kathy was born in Tyrone Hospital, a few short blocks from her home on 14th Street. Number one song on the radio was Stagger Lee by Lloyd Price. Vince Lombardi signed a 5-year contract to coach the Green Bay Packers, and Buddy Holly had his last performance in Clear Lake, Iowa at the Surf Ballroom. These were big events on this date, along with Kathy Shea's birthday. So, without further ado, let's get into what happened to Kathy Shea miniseries, guys. Okay. A few short weeks before this whole event with Kathy, she was in the hospital having her tonsils removed, and she also ended up getting the chicken pox. She was in Tyrone Hospital where she was born, and she was also in there with her cousins. Her cousins would play while they're in the hospital and like giggle and look under doors and stuff like that. And, like little kids do. And they decided that they were going to have a play date on Friday, March 19th. Okay. The day after this whole incident. Okay. Kathy was looking forward to the play date. She had been sick and she was looking forward to going back to school and finishing the week, and then having this play date that would probably be an overnighter. More likely it was an overnighter at her cousin's house, okay? March 17th, 1965. Kathy goes back to school after a little bout with chicken pox and having her tonsils removed. This was a Wednesday. I believe it was snowing that day. Snowing March 17th, 1965. Okay. Okay, guys. March 18th, 1965. Number one song on the radio is 8 Days a Week by the Beatles. The president is Lyndon B. Johnson. First person to walk in space is Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. Pillsbury Doughboy was introduced. Last but not least, Kathy Shea disappears from Tyrone, Pennsylvania. March 18th, 1965. Let's tell the story, guys. Let's get into it. March 18th, 1965 is Kathy's second day of school back from having her tonsils removed and having the chicken pox. She was getting dressed by her mother, Mary Alice, and she was going to be sent on her way. This was a Thursday. It's kind of rainy, and it had just snowed the previous day. Okay? So it's kind of a cold and dreary day. But Mary Alice is bundling up little 6-year-old Kathy, for her afternoon kindergarten classes. Okay? Now, James, her father, James is on his lunch break from West Vaco. He pulls in, and Kathy is walking down the steps from her home on her way to Adams Elementary. And James stops her and offers her a ride because the weather is not good and she had just been sick. And she says, "No, Dad, I like walking in the snow." They like playing in the snow. And he kisses her and sends her on her way and tells her to have a good day. Mary Alice is standing in the living room looking out the window with Todd and Kevin on her sides, which is Kathy's two younger brothers. She watches Kathy across the street on 14th Street. Across, and there was an empty lot. And I believe it's Hamilton Avenue. Yes, it is Hamilton. She crosses the empty lot at Hamilton, across the bridge, and out of sight. That'll be the last time that the Sheas ever see their daughter again. Now, she disappears out of the Shea sight. But she is walking down Hamilton by Brestlers. Now she's on 15th Street. She doesn't cross the street. She walks down the sidewalk all the way down to North Avenue, where North Avenue and 15th intersect. She speaks with Mrs. Foose. Mrs. Foose says, "How's the ice cream and food at the Tyrone Hospital?" And she says, "Good." She liked the food. Octave long, the crossing guard says, "You better hurry along now, you're going to be late," and crosses her. Now she's walking on North Avenue. She can see Adams Elementary in her sight. Okay, she's on 15th. She makes her way to 16th. She disappears. Okay, there's two people before she disappears that witnesses her walking. Besides Octave Long, Mrs. Foose, there's two little twins that were walking in front of her that did see her walking on the route behind them. But when they turned around again, she was gone. Now, how much lapse time that was is unclear. But we do know that she made it to Garfield. 16th Street was the last place that she was seen at. 16th Street. So from 15th, the main drag up with Octave Long, she made it another block until she was no longer visibly seen. Okay? Now, she disappears. Fast forward to a little after 4 o'clock. Mary Alice is waiting at home, and because she had to run errands, she wasn't home for a while. But Kathy should have been home by now. Kathy is still not home. Mary Alice calls Kathy's kindergarten teacher and says to her, "Did Kathy come to school today?" And the teacher says, "No, I haven't seen her. I thought she was out sick." Because remember, she had the chicken pox and her tonsils removed. She assumed that she was still sick, although she did come back for one day, which was that Wednesday, the 17th. And then all panic breaks out. Okay, she was supposed to be at school and she never made it. So they call the police. Kathy is missing. And then they start searching. They search everywhere. They search everywhere. Dumpsters, trash cans, people's homes, people's attics, people's yards, people's garages, sewage drainage. I mean, anywhere you can possibly look, they looked. And there was many people out. Students were out. Everybody that wanted to volunteer was out. Everybody was looking. And a lot of people were questioned. The family was questioned. The family was ruled out. Like I said, the family was interviewed. All the family members, including Kathy's classmates, which I have an interview of a little bit down the road. But everybody was interviewed. Everybody was questioned. There was no stone unturned. Like they literally did everything. There was even searchers all the way down as far as Harrisburg looking for little Kathy Shea. The Sheas would have the police come to their homes every day and update them and let them know what was going on with the search. Now they had bloodhounds come to the house on 3 different occasions. And the bloodhounds would go from the steps all the way down the follow Kathy's route, all the way to 15th Street, down 15th Street, up north, and it always ended at Garfield Street. Garfield Street was 1 block from Adams School. So went from 14th Street to Hamilton, down Hamilton to 15th Street, down 15th Street to north, and up north to 16th Street, where she was last seen. And then right after that would be Garfield. So she's last seen at 16th, and her scent was lost at Garfield Street, which was a short block from 16th. Okay. So it can get a little confusing if you're not familiar. It took me a little bit to get familiar with the names of these streets. But Garfield Street was where the scent was lost. Like I said, it was 3 times that these bloodhounds would trace the scent, and it would always end at Garfield. Now, it's believed that she got into a vehicle. Now, people question whether or not she got in willingly or not, because there was no sign of a struggle, there was no screaming, there wasn't anything. It was just like she just vanished. Like Susan Fern stated, it was like the ground opened up and just swallowed her. It was that quick, and that was it. She was gone. Because she was supposed to meet Susan. Susan is a 6th grader. She is also Kathy's cousin. She was supposed to meet her at 16th Street. But Susan decided she was going to take a different route that day because she was mad at one of the patrol boys named James. And we do believe it's the same James that we'll hear about later on when we talk more about the story. Okay. She's supposed to meet Kathy at 16th. She decided to go out the back door of Adams and take a different route home for lunch. And after lunch, she was supposed to meet Kathy for Kathy's afternoon kindergarten. That didn't happen. And the individual that took Kathy, I believe they were an opportunist. They saw that Kathy was walking alone. She was running late, which means there wasn't many people around. Definitely not much behind her. There was only one person behind her, and that was a little boy, which doesn't come into play in any of this. But we know that he was the only one behind Kathy. So there's no information on this little boy other than he was behind her at some point at 15th Street when he was crossed by Octave Long. So the man was an opportunist. From what James states, he states that an individual in a dark colored vehicle was questioning him about who Kathy Shea was. He asked the patrol boy, "Could you please point out Kathy Shea to me?" And the patrol boy points to Kathy. She was walking with a couple other students. So this individual, which is the man in the sketch, he comes back later. I think he keeps a good track on what's going on with Kathy, because he's not heard from again until the very day that Kathy comes back from her tonsillectomy. He's not heard from again from November of '64 all the way back, all the way until 1965, which is March 17th, when he asked the same patrol boy James if Kathy's come through yet. And he says, no, I haven't seen her. Now, it's believed that she was walking with Susan, because she normally did walk with Susan, except for March 18th, okay, on a regular basis. They would meet, like I said, at 16th in North. But that didn't happen. So, from what people were saying, there was a green vehicle parked on Adams Avenue, which would have been 17th Street. That was parked. Now, most cars are parallel parked, but this car was parked at an angle where he could just pull right out. You know, he didn't have to back up, pull out. He could just pull right out. So we got ourselves someone that doesn't really obey parking rules. And from what people say, he was parked there at 12:15, and they saw the man. They said it was a man that nobody's recognized. Nobody is familiar with who this man is. And it's a dark green, beat up, weathered car. And this is the car that's believed to be the kidnapper. But it could also be a different vehicle. I don't know if the man had two vehicles or not, or if that's even him, but it's theorized that he may be the man that is the kidnapper. But regardless, the man that questioned James was not in a green car, he was in a different car. So let's get that straight. I have some more information that an individual or two said that a girl fitting the description of Kathy around 4 o'clock the same day was seen in Bellwood in the back of a car with her feet pressed up against the back of the front seat, eating ice cream. And there was a man that fit the description of a unshaven older gentleman around 50, which is also the man in the sketch. It could be the same person. The suspect description was a thin, unshaven man who would be talking to school kids. Of course, these kids are the ones that identified him and were able to make the sketch. Okay, and a green car, which some other people believe or have had encounters of a man that fits the description but was in a darker, rounded, early model 50s weathered car. Okay. It very well could have been the same person that had two vehicles. Okay, not out of the realm of possibility. Okay. This is a statement from Mrs. Judy Ferrari, which was Kathy's kindergarten teacher. This is also Judy's first year teaching. And it is as follows. I didn't think that she had played hooky because she was an obedient child. I was at home about 4:45 when I got a call from Mrs. Shea inquiring whether Kathy had been to school. When I replied no, then we both realized that something horrible had happened and that something was wrong. Kathy was only 6, but she had a highly developed sense of responsibility. Okay? Kathy was a smart kid. She was reserved, but she wasn't stupid. Would she willingly get into a car of someone that she didn't know, even though they knew who she was? And more than likely did their homework on what was going on with her. Okay, like I said, they didn't, from November all the way to March 17th, he wasn't coming around. The very day that she goes back to school, he's questioning James. Has she come through yet? He's keeping tabs on what's going on with her. He knows her name, and the reason he knows her name is because James told him who she was. My question is, where did he get the name from? Now, I think, and this is my opinion, and it's also shared by certain people of the community, that this may have been a personal vendetta against the Sheas. Maybe James, maybe the grandfather, because they were prominent in the community. Remember, James was the foreman, and his grandfather was also a prominent man at Westvaco. Okay, he was one in upper management. He also had a baseball field named after him. They were big in the community. Okay, they were high up in some of the clubs in the community. Okay, James served as an exalted ruler of Tyrone Elks Lodge 212. Fred Leamer and the state police spent 13,000 man-hours in the effort to find Kathy. There's many people over the years that worked on the case, from Fred Leamer to Pat Snyder, Terry Summers, and currently Dana Martini. As many as 4,000 people were working on this case to try to find her. Now, Kathy's neighbor, Bergie Werner, was also pregnant when Mary Alice was pregnant with Kathy. Okay, they were both pregnant at the same time. Judy Ferrari also states that Kathy was reserved but a bright child, and Kathy would not have accepted a ride from anyone. Remember, she refused a ride from her own father 10 minutes ago, from the time that this abduction took place. She once refused a ride from someone she knew, even when it was raining. When it was raining, she was getting wet, but she still refused a ride. Okay, she wanted to walk. And I still believe that no news is good news, and that she is still alive. Maybe someone took her and she is loved, and she can become someone's child. Maybe they wanted her very badly. Maybe she is a happy adult now, and if there is any hope in this, we have to accept that. And that is a credit from the Tyrone Daily Herald. Bergie Werner is the staff writer on that. Remember, Bergie Werner is also Kathy Shea's neighbor. And remember, she was pregnant at the same time that Mary Alice was when she was pregnant with Kathy. Okay, so there's a lot of connections here with a lot of these details. Several rumors started to come forward about child molestation, but nothing has been reported. People would talk, but nobody ever called anybody. They never called the police. Now, this is a theme in this Kathy Shea case. There are a lot of incidents that took place, but no phone calls to the police other than when Kathy disappeared, the initial phone call. People weren't calling the police back then, when they should have been, but they didn't. But maybe that was just the times. You know, people just didn't call the police. You know? A 10-year-old reported that a man tried to entice her to go for a ride with boxes in the back of his vehicle. He drove a tan car. It's a story, but this was in Phillipsburg, a little bit up the road. Another report on South 9th Street was of a peeping Tom. The man was about 5'8", stocky build, and nobody called the police. They just didn't, once again. And the police came out and made a statement that You need to call the police if you see this man. Call us. There was 5,000 flyers sent out to schools all over the United States. 50,000 flyers, my correction, were sent out to schools about Kathy because they felt like maybe somebody, her abductor, may have re-enrolled her in classes somewhere else. And they wanted to get her picture out to these schools in case anybody recognized her and could report her back to Tyrone. Okay? No luck with that. The Sheas also, a while ago, adopted a daughter to replace Kathy because the boys wanted a sister. They wanted a sister, so they adopted, and Mary Alice wanted a daughter. So they went out and did that, and but nothing will replace Kathy. Okay. They also got a German Shepherd because they felt like this man may come back and try to take more kids. So they got a dog. There is this, I saw this on Facebook, where one of the family members of the Sheas reported that during the anniversary of her disappearance, so every March 18th, there would be somebody that would throw shoes into the yard that would be something that would resemble something that you would wear. So I'm sure that they were not happy about that, and it makes you kind of wonder that if maybe this wasn't a personal vendetta and they just wanted to continue to torment, or it may be just a bunch of locals that are a-holes. I mean, we don't know for sure, but regardless, whoever did it is a complete a-hole. Now, Kathy had an uncle named Norman. Actually, she had two uncles. One was Howard, one was Norman. But Norman was always getting into trouble. He once broke into somebody's home, opened the window up and climbed through and stole some things. Went through people's drawers. I think he stole a little bit of money off of somebody's dresser drawers. And he had morals crimes. Crimes that were considered morally wrong. So people in the community believed that Norman was the man that kidnapped his own niece. But like I said, the family was ruled out as being suspects. But it is kind of odd that Norman did disappear in 1966 around December. And there was an ad in a newspaper stating that if anybody's seen Norman, to call the number. So he didn't just leave and nobody noticed. Okay, people in law enforcement wanted to know where he was. So this is very odd. Norman also had some children of his own, and one of his sons died at the age of 17 in Texas.